Welcome everybody. This is our monthly Let's Talk / Oakwatch meeting, and the content of the Let's Talk discussions is sort of driven by issues that are of immediate concern to the Oakland neighborhood. We'd like to be able to keep this as discussion focused as we can, but in the case of tonight's topic, there's a lot of information that we'd like to be able to share with you. So I hope you will excuse us that we are going to be kind of we're going to be giving you a bit of a slideshow. However, I'm really hoping that if at any time any of you has a question or you want to be like, whoa, wait, please feel free to unmute yourselves for a moment and say, I have a question, or to drop something into the chat, and we will get to it right away. And I promise that we will be looking at each other for as much of this meeting as we possibly can, because this is really about a community dialogue. So the topic of this evening's conversation for Let's Talk. We are first going to talk about this topic, and then we will shift to the Oakwatch portion of the meeting. So I'm going to talk for a bit, and then I'm going to hand it off to Alina Zaitsev, who is the chair of the Oakwatch committee. The topic for this evening is Oakland Public Realm Subdistrict E, the proposed legislation rezoning 17 some odd acres of Central and South Oakland that is currently in transit between the City Council and the Planning Commission. So to very quickly sort of rehash a little bit of the history here, which is very, very short, since this has all been happening more or less in the last couple of weeks. On September 17th, the mayor submitted a bill to City Council seeking to rezone a big chunk of Oakland, and this bill is not part of the Oakland plan process and did not involve the Department of City Planning, and arrived as something of a surprise on City Council's desk. And then on the 21st, Councilman Bobby Wilson introduced the bill as 2021-1906 and remanded it to the Land Use and Economic Development Committee to refer to the Planning Commission. Oakland residents then organized a petition for a public hearing, and at the next Land Use and Economic Development Committee meeting on the 29th, the committee voted to hold the bill pending the hearing. The hearing was then scheduled for October 5th. 31 people spoke at the hearing, 27 in opposition to the bill, including 17 Oakland residents. And following the hearing, OPDC and several Oakland residents reached out to Councilman Bruce Krause's office to request a meeting to discuss the matter further, and no one received any acknowledgement from the councilman's office during that time. On October 12th, Councilman Krause announced that he, his legislative aide, and Walnut Capital's lawyer had spent every day since the hearing behind closed doors, working on a set of amendments which he introduced at the same time that he asked council to vote to approve them. And after some brief discussion, council voted 8-0 to send the amended bill to the Planning Commission for its review. So the Planning Commission now has 90 days until January 11th to complete its review, including a public hearing, and then to reach a determination, which will then subsequently be sent to City Council for another public hearing and a vote. So that's where we are. Maura, if you could start the slides, please. Sorry, from now on it has to be visual. It can't just be people's faces for just a second. It's a lot of information to get through, as I said. Does anybody have any questions about the process so far before we talk about the content of what is in the zoning bill? Okay. From here on out, I don't see all of you very easily, so if you actually do have something to say, please, as I said, unmute yourself and ask the question or drop it into the chat. I am viewing OPDC's screen and there's nothing here. I can hear Mara panicking in the other room. Here we are. Great. Can you see? There we go. So, yes, I am to announce ahead of time. Sorry, these slides are sometimes helpful. That our regularly scheduled Oakland-wide meeting next Tuesday, the October 26th, is going to be a jointly held development activities meeting between OPDC, the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition, and the City of Pittsburgh's Department of City Planning. And it will be all about CMU's IMP and their process. So please check that out. And if none of you has had the pleasure of listening to Bob Reppy talk as quickly as possible, I can guarantee you it is a treat. Next slide, please. Right, so this evening we are talking about the proposed Oakland Public Realm Subdistrict E. And this is a picture of what that realm encompasses. Next slide, please. So before we start talking about exactly what is in it, let's talk about what is an Oakland Public Realm District. And this is the text of the purpose as it is written into the zoning code for the Oakland Public Realms, and there are more than one. Oakland is a place of unusual density and concentrated public activity due to the lively environment of highly mixed uses, monumental and grand civic buildings, and large educational and medical institutions. So right away, it is contextualizing the Oakland Public Realm within the context specifically for Oakland. Like, this is why we need this, is because this is a vibrant and very busy and dense neighborhood, and we want to be able to enhance its good aspects. The intent of the Oakland Public Realm District is to provide regulations for the development and growth of Oakland in an effort to preserve the mixed-use nature of the community while enhancing the sense of place within Oakland's public areas. So it's specifically geared towards areas that are public in Oakland. So the Oakland Public Realms include the Boulevard of the Allies, which is District D, Forbes and Fifth, Craig Street, and the Atwood Street district. I think that's all. Wanda's going to jump in and correct me if I get that wrong, but I believe that those are the existing 4 Oakland Public Realm sub-districts. And each of them has a particular kind of character that the district zoning is intended to preserve and enhance. So the Oakland Improvement Strategy, a comprehensive strategy for the development, improvement, and zoning of Oakland's public corridors, housing, and commercial areas, identified the need to create zoning standards reflective of the vast areas of Oakland used and seen by the general public. So again, this is zoning which is intended to describe areas of Oakland that are public, that are used already by people coming and going, that have a lot of retail in them or other kinds of businesses, and that receive a great deal of traffic. So there are the 4 sub-districts have been designed to accentuate the positive attributes of each area and to protect and enhance the fine qualities of Oakland. Next.
It's going on. I don't think they can see me. I think my picture's been
the
muted.
server.
It doesn't matter. I think
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
I hear you, yes. I'm in the middle of speaking. If you don't mind muting for the time being, or
yeah, I'm new to this.
No worries. We're glad to have you. So I was in the middle here of describing what the Oakland Public Realms purpose is, right? And so this is the meat of what the actual existing zoning for the Oakland Public Realms is. The purpose is to enact and implement new zoning districts to enhance and protect Oakland's special character, to protect the character of less intensive uses from the impacts of more intensive uses. So don't crowd out the little guy is basically what we're saying, and don't crowd out the fact that there is a residential component to Oakland as well. To provide a guide to non-residential and residential development in order to encourage growth that will be both pedestrian friendly and compatible with the existing neighborhood. So again, the entire purpose of this is about compatibility. And then to encourage mixed-use development that allows non-residential and residential uses to coexist without conflict. Which, good luck with that in Oakland, but that's the intent of the Oakland Public Realm District. So next slide, please. So OPRE, Oakland Public Realm E, proposed new district, has its own purpose, which it has written, and it says the purpose of this district is to encourage the high quality redevelopment of properties and improvements within the Oakland Crossings district, including the redevelopment of portions of the Boulevard of the Allies, Bates Street, Halkett Street, and McKee Place. And this is where some of us who are more familiar with Oakland might start to say, but Halkett Street and McKee Place are not really actually public realm areas. They're residential, and it's a little bit strange, but so hold that thought. To address the need for urban density for a variety of uses, including mixed uses, while at the same time creating significant open space and public amenities. 3, to develop the opportunities for a variety of types of housing within the district. To establish and reestablish safe and attractive pedestrian, bicycle, and transportation improvements and enhancements. We've actually been puzzling over this for some time. We don't know what establish and reestablish means, like this is a continuous cycle, we're not sure. Number 5, to create consistency of scale, size, and design of buildings and amenities within this district. And it's important to note that they're borrowing some of that language from the existing subdistrict D, which would go on to say, in order to create a sense of place within the Boulevard or the Allies district, for instance, that's not what they have here. They just say it has to be consistent. And to 6, provide meaningful connections from this district to the rest of Oakland and the surrounding neighborhoods. We still don't 100% know what that means either. The regulations are intended to encourage the mixed use nature of the community and to encourage investment to increase the residential population and commercial activity. So in this purpose, basically increased density is presented as a good unto itself. And the reasons why this is necessary or advisable within the open context is completely omitted from the proposal, the purpose. So this is what we have to go on with the proposed bill. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask at this time? Okay, so
I don't know
moving
if
on.
ask, but they're trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. They started with a special purpose district and decided to make it an OPR instead.
Yes, pretty much. And they're drilling additional holes in order to be able to make it round. So yeah, 100% what you're saying. Next slide, please, Maura. So, okay, here we are again, picture of the Oakland Public Realm District E, and you can see that it has 3 subdistricts, A, B, and C. Next slide, please. Okay, so subdistrict A, which is McKee Street, is currently zoned as residential. And OPRE is looking to turn this into commercial zoning, which could bring, and among the permitted uses, are large parking structures, fast food restaurants with drive-throughs, and utility generating plants, wastewater treatment plants, etc. Oh, yes, sorry, thank you, Mark. Yes, it's supposed to be McKee Place. That's our bad. At this point, I'm going to ask Wanda if she could join in here, because Wanda, in addition to being our executive director, has a long professional history as a planner and is intimately familiar with these zoning codes, and I think has a lot to offer in this context. So is there anything you'd like to highlight here, Wanda?
I would, thanks. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Wanda Wilson with OPDC. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And I did do a very thorough review of this document. I have it in front of me, and we do want to really point out some things that are being proposed so you can specifically understand what this proposal entails. So subdistrict A, as it says here on the slide, is zoned residential today. So it's zoned multifamily residential, which allows apartments, which is what is there today. And the proposal is to turn it into a commercial district with a wide variety of uses that are allowed. We only highlight a couple of them here, but really a parking structure, a large parking structure would be allowed as a use as of right in this, in the commercial area. So it'd be absolutely out of context with that neighborhood character that exists today on McKee Place. And there are also a lot of other of the commercial uses that are proposed in the legislation in the bill that is before the Planning Commission. Educational classroom space, at a general, not, it's limited in general in the code means sort of smaller scale is the limited version of a use. And then general is the full on as big as you can do it. So, so educational classroom space general would actually be over 20,000 square feet, which is big. Laboratory and research services, those are big lab office buildings. Office, again, parking structure, and utility as a primary use is proposed in this subdistrict A, which again McKee Place is zoned residential currently, and it's part of the residential section of the neighborhood. It's zoned residential multifamily, which means you can have apartment buildings there. But to change the entire character and to allow a utility use is pretty concerning, and it's a pretty drastic proposal. So I can read what the definition of utility general means. Generating plant, electrical switching facilities, substation, a water treatment plant, a wastewater treatment plant, water tanks, and other facilities that provide electricity, gas, heat, steam, sewage collection, rail lines. These are the uses that are allowed, and that's what's being proposed in this, that Bruce Krause and the mayor are proposing for McKee Place as a primary use. So that's particularly concerning. There's also a significant amount of changes that they make to the site development standards, which is the setbacks and height and that kind of thing. So the height would be up to 108 feet, which is really a 10-story building. They get rid of the rear yard setback, so it could be 108 feet parking structure or office building all the way up to the back of the lot, right against the homes on Coulthard Street. So, right now we have rear yard setbacks, to kind of protect those uses from each other. So those are some of the highlights of, really a drastic change from what the use is today. We might have a couple of visuals of what that might be like in Subdistrict A.
So
this is McKee
currently
Place.
And it could be huge. Oh my goodness, so big. Or it could be.
So that's what could be allowed under this legislation as it's proposed for that section, Subdistrict A on McKee Place. I could do a similar analysis for you of Subdistrict B. So this is Halkett Street, and it's currently zoned, again, it's a residentially zoned area with residential uses on the side of Halkett Street across from McGee Hospital. It's currently zoned residential 3-unit, moderate density. So it's, 3-unit dwellings are allowed. But primarily, it's a residential zoning district that doesn't allow a wide variety of commercial uses. Similarly to what I described before, this large scale of commercial uses are proposed as permitted as of right. Parking structures, so you could have a parking garage as a primary use there. The utility that I described before, very large scale retail and education classroom space, hotel, laboratory, very large scale development. Again, with no rear yard setback in the site development standards. And we'll have this very specific analysis on our website and point you to where you can see some of this information for yourselves. But we wanted just tonight, through this overview, to kind of hit the high points for you, for us to kind of give you the basics of what we're seeing. The height would be 120 feet. With bonuses. So you could get to that 120 feet with the bonuses that they propose, which is a 12-story building, no rear yard setbacks. So again, it's right smack up to the residential areas that abut this particular area. So we might also have some opportunity to visualize that as well.
Wastewater treatment on Halkett.
So that's what, that's what's being proposed in terms of the uses that are allowed in Subdistrict B. The utility, both limited and general, as a primary use. parking garage, very large scale retail, offices, hotel, very essential character of the neighborhood drastically changed from what it is today. In subdistrict C, it's a little bit different in terms of the change from what's there today, because the subdistrict C is actually zoned Oakland Public Realm subdistrict D today, which is already a mixed-use commercial district, which, as Andrea described, is special zoning for Oakland's public corridors, main corridors. So a lot of the uses that are proposed in this legislation already are allowed in the subdistrict E zoning that's in place today, and has been in place for many years. But I would highlight a couple of the changes for you. They do allow utility. So, again, the wastewater treatment plant. College and university campus is listed as a primary use as of right, which is not a use that's allowed as of right in the Oakland Public Realm D zoning district that exists today. Similarly, educational classroom space, limited and general, which again can be very large scale, 20,000 square feet or more, is added into this use in this existing proposal. And they create something that we can't find the use in the zoning code. It's called research and development services. I think they're creating a new use that isn't in the zoning code. We can't quite understand. We'll have to ask our friends at city planning for more information. Biotech technology, with including medical and animal testing. So, and again, the height is, the biggest change in addition to those uses is the height. And they also don't allow, it's kind of funny that in subdistrict C, they take out residential uses that would normally be allowed in pretty much every zoning district, except maybe the urban industrial zoning district doesn't allow single family homes as a primary use by right. But today, the Oakland Public Realm D does permit single family houses, 2-family residential, and 3-family residential. Under this proposal, they're simply not permitted, which is an odd thing in terms of most planners would agree that that's a bit odd. They take out also a use that's allowed right now called housing for the elderly. They remove that. So the height that they propose would go up to 160 feet with all the bonuses that they propose people can get. And again, the rear yard setback is 0, which means, again, those abutting uses of residential that are nearby, would have no setback protection or, sort of that cushion that setbacks provide. So, these uses, the college and university campus, the educational classroom space, the utility, the research and development services, and the height really would make it quite different than the Oakland Public Realm D that we have today.
I think there we go. This is Oakland Public Realm D as we see it today, the boulevard. And we have some, oh yes, oh, it could become.
Yeah, so that's what's being proposed. I think the other thing that they also propose in terms of signage, in again, sort of the site development standards, to adopt the signage guidelines that are allowed in the Golden Triangle District, which seems a little odd to me in terms of scale of signage that would be allowed. Then I'd like to just a couple of things before we get to a couple of other provisions related to some specific issues Some other things that they take out in this proposal is something called residential compatibility standards. And again, planning geeks like me really love this stuff and kind of get what that means immediately, but it's really no more complicated than what it sounds like. Residential compatibility means that there's a section in the code that says if you have a residentially zoned area that meets up against a commercially zoned area, there's some protections in place for the residential area when you're going to be developing in the commercial area that's really close to the residential, in order to have some compatibility with the nearby residential area. And they specifically call out in this, that they just say they're not applicable at all. Forget it. Even though in the entire rest of the city of Pittsburgh, these residential compatibility standards apply. In this particular ordinance, that's been being proposed. No, we don't want to have any residential compatibility. We just take it out. We forget it. Forget like it ever happened. The rest of the city can have that, but our Oakland neighborhoods can't. That's kind of the biggest. A couple of the other things we really wanted to get into was letting you know what they're looking at in terms of a bonus system to get to all of these heights that are proposed. So there's a sort of minimum height that if you don't do any of the things to get a bonus in these various sub-districts, but then there's ways to get bonuses to get up to the maximum height. And they really add on a lot of ways to get these bonuses. They kind of make it pretty easy for people to get a bonus. But the thing that's conspicuously absent is anything related to affordable housing as a way, to either inclusionary zoning or a performance-based system related to affordable housing. So, that's a real concern for us because it's a priority already identified in the development section of the Oakland plan recommendation, the draft recommendations that we're looking at. It's also just a high priority for our community for equitable development and inclusionary development is to have provision for ways to support resources to develop affordable housing. That is, if we're going to have additional market rate development. So there's a performance point system that's in the code today. Things like on-site energy generation and consumption, rainwater capture, public art, all things that are nice. But the section, they took one out. They used all the ones in section 915 that exist in the code today, but left out affordable housing. So we have a problem with that. But then they also offer people bonuses for things that we don't really think people should be given a bonus for. So there's a bonus for just building a hotel. You get a bonus for that. Or just building residential. Just building residential, you can get a bonus. They don't say anything about affordable housing, but just, you're gonna build some apartments? Let's give you a bonus for that. And, they include LEED certification, which is pretty a standard one we already have. So, okay. But then, a bonus for developing a grocery store, which, we want that. But I'm not sure that that structuring it as a way of giving a bonus to somebody who's going to build more market rate housing in our neighborhood is something that we really need to incentivize, nor do we really need to incentivize somebody just building a hotel. And then I think we want to go now to talk about some of the provisions that that are in here about housing, but the terminology that's used is something that I think we really want to dig into and have a discussion of this term that they create. which is really fabricated, called Walk to Work. So Andrea, what you've done some thinking about that. What are your thoughts on this component in this proposal related to this concept that they created called Walk to Work housing?
Well, so none of us 100% quite understands what this is intended to mean, but the gist of it appears to be that in lieu of actually affordable housing, Walnut Capital is proposing that the developments that they would like to build in this newly zoned area would include a bonus for walk to work residential development. And the way that they define this walk to work is that the rental rate of a unit would not exceed 30% of the gross income of the occupants. And there is nowhere in any of this, any explanation or expectation that would be limited to people making a certain amount of money. So gross income can refer to people making, much more money than any of us is making. And somehow there would be a credit that would be given for simply making units that are affordable to the people who are renting them. So here we have a little pullout here that Walnut Capital, from the excerpt from the Trib article here, saying that Walnut Capital has said that the development would include affordable housing with an emphasis on walk to work housing for those working in Oakland. But in fact, actually, there is very deliberately no mention of affordable housing. Affordable housing has very specific definitions, and this does not cut it at all. Next slide, I think. So the intent here is to make these units primarily available to employees and/or the independent contractors of the third-party institutions. So what they are trying very hard to build here is professional housing in these areas here, primarily available to employees and independent contractors. Again, the expectation here is that this is a way of memorializing an institution's intent to actually have a program for its own employees. And somehow this has been written sort of vaguely into the zoning code. Next. So we want to talk a little bit about what the different impact here is between somebody who is making $105,000 a year. For instance, 30% of their income is $31,500, which would be a monthly rent of $2,625. But of course, somebody who is earning between $9 and $13 an hour doing food prep and cooks, waiters, bakers, baristas, and so forth is making $26,470 a year, which 30% of that, is a monthly rent that they could afford that would be $661. So it's a really, really big difference here between the one and the other.
And there's nothing guaranteeing that the person who could only afford $661 a month, would actually have the opportunity to live in any of the housing governed by this zoning.
Right. There's no bonus that would be given to a developer for providing the walk to work housing to the lower end of the income spectrum. It applies without condition across the income spectrum. So yes, all of it could be for affordable only to people who are making over $100,000 a year, and that would somehow satisfy the requirements that are written into this bill.
Yeah, and there's also, I don't know if we have another slide on this or.
Right, so here's another example.
Here's another example. Oh, sorry, my dog.
Barley. Here's another example here as a typical annual wage for somebody who is a nursing assistant, an occupational therapist in the hospital, and those are the kinds of people that the institutions tell us that they do in fact actually want to provide this kind of opportunity to live here in Oakland. Again, their monthly rent that they can afford on 30% of their income is $760, and that's not what we're talking about with this.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the other parts of the code, that we have inclusionary zoning in the Pittsburgh code today. It's not in Oakland right now. It is in Lawrenceville, and you're required through that to actually income qualify people for those affordable housing units. So it really is serving people of lower wages. And it also is durable over time, which this does not mention that at all. They simply say it's an incentive program, which really kind of means it could go away whenever somebody feels like it. And that maybe it's only offered, once, and doesn't continue. And so that's also the issue. When we talk about inclusionary zoning, it's really creating, leveraging resources to be able to create long-term affordable housing that's bona fide as, affordable for people at maybe 80% of area median income, 50% of area median income, and that those housing units are affordable for at least 30 years at minimum. So this does not come anywhere close to that, and creating this this terminology, it doesn't mean anything in terms of affordable housing and the goals that we have as a community for inclusion.
Wanda, could you go back to the last slide? People are asking in the chat to explain the numbers on the bottom.
I was just going to get to that. So sorry about that. I was waiting for my opportunity to jump in there. So the 30% of one's income here allows one to pay a $2,625 of the annual income there for monthly rent. $6,125 would be what would be left over to cover all other kinds of living expenses that are not housing related. And just drawing a contrast between what it is that somebody 30% of somebody's income on the lower end of that spectrum, what it is that they would be expected to live on for the rest of that month after that 30% of their income is gone to housing. So sorry, should have labeled that better.
So we're advocating through the plan process that, we have actual bona fide inclusionary zoning, as part of zoning in Oakland, and that we're not fooled by this.
It's also the case here that if we were going back forward to this one slide here, that this really only even applies, the requirement, such as it is, it really only applies to 10% of the units in the structure. And given how nonsensical it is that the basic requirement is simply that it be affordable to the people who are renting it, regardless of their income, right? It would seem silly that they would only apply that to 10% of the units in their building. The implication being that for 90% of the people who are living there, it's unaffordable. It's really a little bit hard to understand. So it's a sloppy legislation, sloppy bill writing.
It's very sloppy, and it's very deceptive in terms of their talk about it as though it's something that has any kind of relation to affordable housing and helping us meet the lack of affordable housing that's a very real concern in Pittsburgh and a real concern in Oakland. And again, this is nowhere near serving that need, and we're not fooled by it.
Next slide, Morad. We have the opportunity to really, we can in fact actually do affordable housing in Oakland, and inclusionary zoning can and should be included in the Oakland plan as it is being worked on here.
Yeah, and this shows us that it exists in the in the zoning code. It's just in other neighborhoods right now. There's a bonus system in the Uptown zoning that you can actually get a bonus, and it actually lists that people have to be income qualified, and in the Lawrenceville inclusionary zoning, again, it exists today, and it's producing affordable housing units. So there's no reason, that we can't, really have this as a resource for our community here.
So we have next is a little bit playful. We wanted, for not everybody got a chance to watch the video of City Council actually discussing this bill. So we have a couple of short little excerpts, our favorite little moments from the City Council conversation. And this is where Bruce Krause, councilman for the 3rd District, where this zoning is located, is explaining that he forgot to let everybody know about the amended language. There are members of council who don't have it in front of them while they are being asked to vote on this. Mara, if you'd like to play this, you can. We have these excerpts also on our website. It's possible.
So, and so this newly amended version is the one that you want to send to Planning Commission.
If members wish to do so, yes.
Yes, okay, and so, and you want to not give the public time to look at the new one?
I'm sorry, forgive me?
You don't want to give the public time to see the new one?
So I failed to make the request of Madam Clerk to post this publicly on the council website so that everyone can see this, that wishes to see it. We are distributing it to people that have called in that wish to have it so that they can see it as well too. This is the first step of a very long and arduous process. It will come back to council for further consideration, and there will be opportunities to make additional tweaks. There cannot be anything substantive once it comes back, because then we'll be required to restart the process and send it back to Planning Commission. So one of the reasons that we wish to make these substantive changes now is so that we can send a clear message along with the legislation that this is what we wish to see, and that it complies with existing code and what is already required. And again, as I said earlier, much of it, not much, but a substantial portion we took from the Eco Innovation District in Uptown, which was clearly considered, passed by this council, and supported.
Right.
Not
So
the affordable housing bonus point system.
I had difficulty keeping a straight face while he was saying that in real time, and in real, like reading it back again, it still makes me giggle. So yes, it is very possible that, he forgot, but more likely actually it wasn't in any way important to him to allow the public to see the amendments that he had made, that then he invited city council members to vote on, also sight unseen and unprocessed. Not one of the people who voted on this had really had the chance to actually read into it and understand what it was that was being proposed. To answer a question that Millie dropped in the chat earlier about the process and the opportunities for amendment, exactly as he says, now that this has been sent to the Planning Commission, the opportunities for substantive changes to this legislation are effectively nil, because if there were substantive changes to be amended onto this, they would indeed need to restart the entire process again and send it right back to the Planning Commission, which would have to take another 3 months to look at it before council could then hold another public hearing and vote on it. So it would stretch out the process somewhat if they were in fact going to incorporate public feedback into the design of this zoning legislation. So yes, and Dave asked the question whether or not this wasn't required to be posted on Legistar. The clerk did not get to update this until after the legislation had been posted, and because these were amendments that were being introduced by the sponsoring council person, apparently no, it was not required that they be posted in advance of the actual meeting. But you would think that that would be good government. There's another slide.
So,
why do we have a scribble? What happened? Ah, okay. So this is where
Three
Councilman
things. First of all,
oh, sorry, I just wanted to explain. So this is where Councilman Ricky Burgess was leaping at the opportunity to introduce himself also as a co-sponsor on this bill and announcing his intent to pass the bill, to vote to pass the bill, regardless of the recommendations of the Planning Commission.
if the bill sponsor will allow me, I'd like to be a co-sponsor.
Please, thank
I
you.
will vote for it now. I will vote for it when it comes back. I have, Mr. Krause and I have had conversations in general, And over the next couple of years, we intend, and I'm saying publicly, but we've decided privately, we will work even closer together in the foreseeable future. I want to commend him on his work on this. I know this was difficult, and you and your staff, this is yeoman's work, and you have my, as someone who tries to craft legislation, right? I see its intricacies and its delicate nature of it. And so as a workman, I see the skill and how this is crafted. And so I am proud to support you on this.
That kind of just sort of, it speaks for itself. And then we have one more excerpt, and I hope you'll bear with us. I just find this really entertaining.
Three things.
This is where Bruce Krause explains to everybody how painful it was to him to hear from so many of Oakland's residents with whom he has worked in the past, their vehement opposition to this bill and to the process by which he was pushing this through.
It's important. There's one component that was left out of the councilman's conversation, not intentionally, I'm sure, but it's the residents. It's the people that have lived there for generation after generation after generation. Salvatore Marianti, you know, I mean, that's Oakland. And these were very, 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 very difficult conversations to have with constituents that I consider to be friends, that I have known for 15, 17 years. And to bring this to them and feel the opposition and they were painful. We went into Oakland yesterday, had some very difficult discussions with people that I respect tremendously, that disagreed with what we are doing today.
Yeah, that's what happened. There were some conversations with people who vehemently disagreed with what he then proceeded to do the next day. So there you have it. That's what it meant. Just to reiterate, to our knowledge, Councilman Krause has not heard, certainly not in any public forum, from any Oakland resident, any one of his constituents, that this is something that they feel is in their interest or in the interest of the district. So if there are other voices that are speaking to him from behind closed doors, obviously none of us has any access to that, but certainly in every invited public forum, the few voices so far that we have heard in support of this project are not Oakland residents and are not Bruce Krause's constituents. So
yeah, and I'd like to also, you know, we had people from other neighborhoods also very concerned about this, and several of you are here tonight. I appreciate it. Sorry.
Truly, we do appreciate it. And it's clearly overcome. But yes, it's absolutely the case. And the point I think that we were trying to do in trying to spread the word about this is really to emphasize for everyone that if a private developer can do this in central Oakland here, you know, amidst the scrutiny of a lot of assembled eyeballs, then this can literally happen in any neighborhood in Pittsburgh. And the profundity of the disregard for community interest and voices is really pretty staggering in all of this. There's a lot of stuff in the chat that I'm not following, but yes, exactly. There's emojis that speak words, shall we say. So yes, so.
Well, I would love to hear from people tonight about what they think about, you know, what you've heard, so we can hear from you.
Totally. We had two more slides. One was about the.
Oh, right, we do.
Do we want to show those as well? We can.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, often we're in Oakland, you know, criticized sort of, oh, you don't have anything good to offer. You don't want any change, or you don't have a vision, right? So if we can move forward, I think that's, you know, it's clearly not true that people can't see some opportunities for improvement in the neighborhood. We've had so many people in the neighborhood participating in the Oakland plan process. So many of you participated in Oakland 2025, you know, which Oakland 2025 is a foundation document for the Oakland plan. It doesn't get thrown away. So we really want to make sure through the Oakland plan process that Oakland 2025 you know, is reflected. And if there would be some major change from the recommendations in Oakland 2025, I think that's a real point for discussion and to really understand why that might be and to hear a lot of public feedback on, why that would be the case. Here in this section of the plan, Halkett Street is identified as a priority area for home ownership and for employer assisted housing, which really focuses on, supporting people to live in the neighborhood by encouraging really home ownership in that area. So another section, we could go to the next one. Even in the charrette for the Oakland plan, we just took a little section of one of the pictures. It's not a done deal or anything, but even in this, you can see that the quality insight, which is kind of where the green item is in the middle of the picture there, there could be redevelopment there, but it doesn't necessarily mean, you can still see Halkett Street still intact, and our park, Zulema Park actually improved and still existing there. And that's another recommendation that, we really look to make through the Oakland plan process, is that Zulema Parklet be rezoned P for park. It should not be zoned this public realm, which is a commercial district. It should be zoned park, and it should be improved and be a park like shown in this picture. So we can see how, there are concepts and thoughts for improvement and investment in the neighborhood that doesn't necessarily involve whole-scale destruction of residential areas in the neighborhood in order to have that development that people want, that could be a good opportunity. Do we have another, or is that it?
That was the end of this particular thing here. We wanted to be able to make sure people had the names
Perfect.
and the numbers for their city council representatives in Oakland. But regardless of whether or not you are an Oakland resident, we hope that you will reach out to your city council people, because this is obviously going to come up for a vote across, all of the city council districts. Every city council person is going to weigh in. And as you just saw, among the more vocal supporters, for instance, is Ricky Burgess, who has no part of Oakland. So it is definitely relevant. It is definitely very topical, and we hope that you will reach out to your city council people. I'm gonna.
If you know anybody in Ricky Burgess's area, have them call him.
We're working on it. But yeah, I just wanted to say, Adam asked for another look at the map of the OPRE here. Can we just back? There you go. Sorry, Adam, this is the map. So as you can see from here, the C area includes Zulema Park and the former Isley site, the substation there on Bates at the Boulevard, the Quality Inn hotel site, and the parcels on Halkett up to Louisa Street. And then B is between Louisa and the Iroquois building on Forbes. And A is McKee from the hotel all the way down to the former Oakland School building, the church building that's there on McKee, but just on the west side of McKee, not the east side of McKee. And it
is also a strange, if I can just interrupt you for a second, it's also a strange thing in terms of zoning. It's not really typically done. If you look at we didn't include the current zoning map, but typically zoning doesn't have the line go down the middle of a street. Good planning, if we had our city planning department involved in this, which is the way zoning should be written, typically you avoid that condition. Just saying, as a, again, I'm a planning geek on this stuff, but just to note that.
So the way they get around the fact that A and B are not contiguous is that the zoning district appears to occupy only the public right-of-way that is Louisa, but not the properties that are located on it.
Which also doesn't make sense.
Kind of bogus.
So that's a bogus way to connect these. It's all doesn't make sense. So
well, isn't that my recollection was, isn't that given though from the SP, or when it was an SP, doesn't the SP allow that? Just
there was never an SP.
There was never.
No.
Never
the
an
original,
idea,
well, the original plan was to make it an SP.
But it never was. It's never
Right,
been an SP.
But part of the SP definition is that they can use that Louisa Street right away to continue.
Well,
contiguous,
that's
whatever that word,
we'd
to
really
make
like to
contiguous.
hear from people about, do you like what's being
Yeah.
proposed?
No, I hate
You
it.
know, and do you want a wastewater treatment plant on Halkett Street? Do you want a parking garage on McKee Place? Do you want campus buildings in this section of the neighborhood? I'd really like to hear what people have to say. You can put it in the chat. Please talk to us and let us know.
We can, if we want to stop sharing for a second so we can see each other, if it would be easier to facilitate conversation. I'm very curious to know people's thoughts. So please jump in. Questions, concerns, next steps.
This is Elena. I just want to say, I think the most important thing that happened tonight is for you to dispel everything that's come out about Oakland crossings in the paper, all the pretty pictures that mean nothing, because it's about just zoning. Nothing of that is in the zoning. And you have emphasized that after that zoning happens, anything can happen. You know, the high buildings, the whole block, a building that's a whole block long, a wastewater, you know, a university campus. So that's very much appreciated. I think that was very much needed for the public. So thank you for that.
Hi.
That's me.
Hi.
Hi, Ziggy. This is Ziggy. Hi. Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I was about 10 minutes late. And since I'm on the phone, I wasn't able to follow along with the presentation. So I was just, of course, I want to support my neighbors in Oakland against this as much as I can and do anything I can to help. I was wondering if there's a way, I don't know if there's anybody else in my situation who is just on the phone. If there's a way I could like see the presentation, if you wouldn't mind sending it to me or making it available.
It's no problem
Okay.
at all. So
Oh, wonderful.
So here we will send you a paper copy if that's better, or I can email it to you. That's not a problem.
And the whole
if anybody-
presentation is being recorded and will be posted too, right?
There's that too, yes.
Wonderful. And if you wouldn't mind editing my phone number out of that, that would be great.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. What was I going to say? I guess I don't really have a lot useful to add yet as far as reactions to what you presented tonight, but I definitely will put my feedback in. But for the time being, since I'm speaking here, if you have any thoughts on things that besides, looking at the information and as a first step, is like what sorts of actions can your neighbors in the surrounding communities like me, how can we support you besides obviously contact our city council person? Is there anything you can think of, at this point that we can do to support you guys?
I really appreciate it, Ziggy, and it's truly a very generous act on your part. And I just want to say thank you very much. Contacting your city council people is definitely the most important piece to do at this time. But I think in general, this is one of those great reminders of the fact that none of us is alone and that we are all pulling in the same boat here. So it's also a great opportunity for us, to be able to, show common cause with similar kinds of encroachments on residential integrity in other neighborhoods, and to realize that this is sort of a function that sort of threatens all of us often. So it's really important that every city council person receives a very clear message from each of their constituents, really, that, community-centered and community-driven planning processes are way more ethical and way more integral and are going to ultimately serve the neighborhood's interests better than these kinds of private deals that are written behind closed doors. So that would be the message that I would hope that we can deliver pretty clearly.
If I could also add a little bit of information, which I'm not sure if we have on a slide, or we're just beginning to confirm with city planning. We will be hosting a formal development activities meeting on this legislation before it goes to Planning Commission. Also, we'd love to have people participate in that and offer, because those comments get recorded as part of the official record that the city planning staff provides to the commission. So that would be super helpful. We're confirming that, but it's looks to be Monday, November 29th would be a Zoom meeting like this one. So that would also, I just wanted to let people know we'll firm that up, and it'll be on our website, and we'll get the word out to everyone. But that's what it looks to be in terms of the date for that. We'd love to have a lot of people offer their feedback at that meeting.
Could you repeat that date, please?
Monday, November 29.
The Monday right after Thanksgiving. We will certainly send each of you an email to let you know, or we have your contact information. If we don't have your email address, if you do not receive updates from us, if you're kind enough, you can either DM it to me in the chat or send us an email at questions@opdc.org. Michael, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I might be the odd man out, but I'm super excited about this proposal. And I feel like I can speak on that. I'm dead center of the proposal, right? I am. If you look at that little cross street, my house is right in the middle of it. I feel it's a little disingenuous to present this information as though sewage treatment plants will be showing up there when there's a lot of sustainable and green building elements out there that have wastewater treatment and energy generation on it. And those are some of the greenest specs a building can have. So for example, the convention center downtown has a sewage treatment plant on it. You wouldn't know it, and makes it a very green. It's one of the first green convention centers in the country. And no one's complaining about that, right? So I can present it in both ways of showing you a picture of a large sewage treatment plant with water exposed out there. Just not a fair way to present what a sewage treatment plant is. So I feel like we've bundled a lot of different things into this conversation, which just can agitate people to not make good decisions, right? And so I'm okay with, I understand the idea that maybe this is not the appropriate way to push something through, and it's a separate discussion, right? But to me, development is going to happen. I'm all for increasing density. For me, as an environmentalist and a green building advocate, I'd rather see density in a city where we have the infrastructure, where we have the bus lines, where we have the existing items already here, instead of growing more out into Cranberry and taking over more farms and forests and things like that, right? The idea of people living where they're working means they come out of their apartment and they go right to work. It saves commuting, it saves driving. Look at many New Yorkers don't have cars because they live and walk and go right to work and right in the same area, right? And so that's a beautiful concept. And how we make it work and how do we make it affordable for a wider range of people is a great question. And so I felt like today it was very one-sided in terms of looking at the positive things that could come from redeveloping an area. And I'm right in the middle of it, right? And so I'll have the 10 stories and 12 stories on either side of me. I think we need to think bigger. I think we need to rethink Louisa Street. So take, for example, imagine if we took Louisa Street from Halkett all the way over to Atwood and turned it into a beautiful pedestrian area, right? And because right now, no, Forbes is not really a comfortable road to walk on. Forbes is heavy buses, things like that. But imagine now Louisa Street becomes this great pedestrian way with food trucks and outdoor seating, and it becomes a whole new avenue, a new sort of subway of looking at our city. Same with Coltart. We could reinvent Coltart as a whole pedestrian place. I've been up in Kent, Ohio, and they've redone their entire downtown area with residential, commercial, mixed use all together, and it's a beautiful redo. And so I think the potential is here. And so I don't think we should be afraid of development. And I'm all for a public process and looking at it and talking about it, but development in itself is not a bad thing. And I feel like that's one of the dangers of this group here, is that we're anti-development, and that doesn't get to it. I think we need to break up the argument into different components to say, What are we trying to do here? We want a better public process. Great. Here are the different concerns with, but to denigrate sort of green building, I was amazed today to hear a denigration of green building when that's a goal that we're trying to set out there for our communities. And so anyway, so I'm all for it. I know I may be the odd man out, but those are my points. Thanks for listening.
I just want to say for the record that I think that, like, personally, like, taking off my OPDC hat and just speaking to you as an Oakland neighbor, honestly, like, I can appreciate a lot of what you're saying, totally. And I spent, 14 years living in New York City, and I appreciate entirely what density can do in terms of the sustainability of a neighborhood and the churn and the retail services and the other kinds of, like, social connections that are possible in a dense milieu where there's room for everybody. But I think that I hope that you don't take away from this presentation, even though we were being a little glib with the images that we were pasting into those street views, and I 100% agree. We didn't attempt to make it realistic, precisely because we were trying to be able to say, like, yo, the trouble here is that the legislation as written is so clumsy and so broad as to really permit all kinds of uses that have no specific sustainability purpose. There might be height bonuses for a hotel, but similarly there can be these enormous parking structures, and there's no requirement for any of that they pay attention exactly to those things, to the energy use or the footprint of the building, to the purpose that it serves within the larger community. And certainly there isn't any provision in there to be able to account for the real need for more affordability within the neighborhood. So greater density as a tool for providing that kind of affordability, for instance, it's not here. This isn't what this isn't what the zoning is going to be able to permit or to encourage or even really to support. So I can appreciate that there's some elements to what it is that Walnut Capital has proposed in their design concept, right, which are very attractive. And I think that they've tried very hard to make them attractive. They've drawn, as Elena was saying, very pretty pictures, right? But that is not the content of the zoning bill. And so it's just important to really realize that the zoning is sort of outlasts the building, outlasts the interests of the developers, et cetera, and is something that we all have to kind of live with for a long time. So we should be deliberate and careful about it. So the Oakland plan process, which I really hope that everybody takes opportunity to participate in, is winding up the comment period for this first draft. I dropped into the chat a little bit ago the link. So it's engage.pittsburghpa.gov/Oakland is the link for the plan. And there are many, many, many opportunities. You just kind of have to dig for them a little bit, but there are many, many opportunities for public comment. And I genuinely hope that if you have an interest in, like, where the density should be located, what kind of open space should be placed, what kinds of things should be preserved, and what kinds of things have the better opportunity to be transformed, I think that there is a great deal of opportunity on that site to really articulate with better specificity and a better sense of the whole than what it is that is being proposed through this zoning.
I'd like to say I thought your presentation was good. I don't think any of us are expecting a giant wastewater treatment plant on any of that property, because that property is a lot more valuable than that. But I think what's clear is that Walnut Capital through Peduto is proposing a wholesale change of the zoning without the proper processes, and they're going to get rid of any control. They're going to turn McKee Place into a commercial zone where they can build 12-story buildings with whatever they want in them, and they're going to turn the Boulevard of the Allies site and Zalima Street, that whole area, into another commercial institutional zone with 16-story buildings. And then they're going to put some residential on Halkett, which, as your graphics showed, there's not going to be any affordable housing in it, because there's no commitment to anything affordable, and they're going to diminish the residential nature of any of Oakland, and they're sandwiching Coulthard Street, which allowing to build up to the property lines on both sides of Coulthard Street is a blatant effort to try to push those people out and to turn that into another commercial zone. And I think this whole proposal should be thrown out and go through the normal procedures of city planning and zoning.
I have some experiences to relate, having been a longtime Oakland resident. This is Millie. I live in Oak Cliff. We had a proposal from Oxford to develop a 100-unit apartment building on the old Allman Cadillac site. And they were adamant that they could build that, even though we residents said, no, 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 some of that is still zoned residential. City council or zoning didn't believe us, and nor did Oxford Development. We had to go down to city council and dig out records from 2002 to show that indeed part of that site was zoned, was still zoned residential, the back of it, and they could not build their building there. They would have built it had we not done their homework. City wasn't going to do the homework for them, and Oxford wasn't do the homework. That's the only reason there is not a 100-unit apartment building across from my house on Ophelia Street. So there's one case. My experience is that developers will build to the rule. They'll build what they can. Another example is Skyview. When Skyview was built, some of us went to a meeting there where the plans were presented and asked, well, couldn't you build it back a little bit from Forbes Avenue, make the sidewalk a little bit wider there? The developer's comment was, no, that's what the zoning says. That's what we're going to build. If you have a problem with that, write to your city councilman. So there's two strong examples where developers will build what they want to build according to what's in the code. So we have to be very careful about the code. The other comment I want to make is about, the Walnut Capital has a website for this project. It's called Oakland Crossings. Oakland Crossings, does it say PGH? Well, just search for Oakland Crossings.
Yes,
And
PGH.
they have all of their maps and their presentations. And one of their last pages is a plea for people to write to all their councilmen and say they're in favor of the project. So we need to do the same, or at least whether you're for it or against it, you need to let your councilman know. Another comment I wanted to make was about Zulema Street. So once again, Zulema Street is very, very important to my neighborhood. We use it all the time, so we don't have to go on Forbes Avenue. So let Forbes Avenue stay commercial. We need Zulema Street to get down to the post office, to get out east, to go to Squirrel Hill, wherever. We use it all the time. And to take a public street like that, we've had other public streets taken too. Hamlet Street used to go through McGee Hospital. That one got taken for us. We'll never see that again. And there's a couple other examples. So once we as a community don't pay attention to that and keep the amenities that we have, they're gone forever. They're gone for the next the future. And my other experience with developers is that we see that they don't like to have to talk to neighbors. They don't like to have to go in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. That's why they want this, in my opinion, I only speak for myself, that's why they want this OPRE, so they can just say, this is what the code allows, this is what we're going to do. We have had people shut out by saying they don't have standing. They tried to shut me out by saying I didn't live in Oakland. They shut some of my neighbors out, and another project by some minute measurement that they were like 1 foot less than a half a mile from a project, so they could throw out their testimony. So they always want to go into getting people out of having standing. So we have to make sure that we have standing here. We're close enough to this. This is going to affect us all. In fact, it's going to affect the whole city. And I think everybody in the city ought to have standing in this, but that's my own personal opinion. So that's all I'll say. I just wanted people to be aware that developers will build to rule.
Right. So I just wanted to reassure everybody that standing isn't something that is at issue in this particular case. And in fact, you know, even though the proposed zoning change is entirely located within Councilman Krause's district, for example, he is deferring to interests outside of his district.
My point, Andrea, is that a developer will, and their attorney will take any opportunity to silence any community input. So whether it's, and by having an OPRE, as you know, you just described all of the things they can do, but they could do by right now, and they will build to rule. Okay, there doesn't have to, we don't need to talk about standing. They are going to do that.
Well, with any luck, we will be able to prevent this from passing at council, and the activities that are required to halt that, if that's indeed the will of the public, do not require the standing, as you were saying. But of course, it's an uphill battle and requires everybody to be mindful of each other and pulling in the same direction. So I 100% hear exactly what you were saying there. I'm sorry to be leaving people here. So Janice and then Bruce and then Adam had their hands up. Janice, did you want to say something?
So can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, I think one of the biggest notions that we have to dispense with is that this anti-development is really extremely important. As somebody on the Oakland Planning and Development Board, and I'm proud to serve on that board, I would like to emphasize we are planning and development. That means that planning is an essential part of what we examine, and I want to thank my colleagues who I'm happy to work with, Wanda and Andrea, for the excellent job that you've been doing. And I want to say, and I think that I sent this out in the email, that we are about inclusion and equity. When we're talking about a university and density, we need to really look at the process. This banter for decades now of painting the community, the people that live here, the people on a daily basis for decades understand what the needs are better than any possible developer with any renderings that comes along, that we understand. And so if we are placated from the process, any input, how can anyone reconcile calling us anti-development? So that's disingenuous. Okay, we're very pro-development, but we need to have a relationship that is harmonious, not a constant parasitic relationship that I think I've shared with some people along the way recently. The book that I've just finished, it's excellent, by Devarian Baldwin, In the Shadow of the Ivory Tower. You don't have to get too far into the book. The first chapter, University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon are mentioned. And, we all, I think, recognize in our own individual ways how our community, our neighborhoods, I don't know if it was me, but I doved over the week, neighbor versities. So let's start building relationships with each other and coming together. And this is my call to everyone here this evening, and thanking everyone for joining us and asking what they can do. Because I think the greatest thing that we can do is join together. Because I really do believe that those people that are proposing this with totally vacating any process, okay, that we've come to know living in a republic is important. I think that they are going to reap ill benefits. If this thing goes through without passing the sniff test along the way, I think people are going to live to regret it. We have East Liberty to look at, years gone by, and seeing how that development that was pushed through, it forced people out of that neighborhood, only to over 4 decades later to be redeveloped again. So we need to look at who's vulnerable and why they're vulnerable, and we need to respect the will of the people. This is the most egregious attack that I have witnessed in my life on this community and this neighborhood, and it has to cease. And the only way it's going to, while we may differ in our opinions, I say it's time that we join together and that we come up with a platform in dealing with this, because it's going to be nonstop bulldozing. And I don't believe it's disingenuous to say that if this project goes forward, that there will be a lot of things that are injurious to not only the people right now on this call, but people throughout the city of Pittsburgh. So goes Oakland, so goes the way of the city of Pittsburgh and beyond. And I encourage people some of the ideas and the things that I identify in Professor Baldwin's book. I mean, it resonates. We live it. I live it. I see it. And, I want to thank everyone, number one, and I want to ask everybody, put on your thinking caps. While we all may not agree with the same premise about an individual zoning or topic or area or building, I think we all agree that process is very important. It's very important, and not to be treated in a dismissive manner with such disdain and disrespect for who we are as individuals and constituents, to not be treated as we're totally full of ignorance. In fact, people should welcome elected officials particularly and developers. If this is meritorious and it's done in the sunlight, they should welcome our input. They should be coming to us and asking, what do we need to do? What do you want? When people point to blight, they need to be reminded that a lot of the blight has been caused by leaving people out of the process, taking a supermarket, taking our schools. This is the blight that people talk about. What blight are we going to talk about, or our children or our grandchildren going to be speaking of in 20 or 30 or 40 years from now? Because people were left out of the process. Because we were considered dispensable? We're not dispensable. We're not dispensable at all. We're all very important. And I thank each and every one of you for being here, regardless of what perspective you come from. Okay, I think it's time we come together. And I think it is, as Professor Baldwin talks about universities, we need to look at how that process has been unfolding across our nation and is leaving cities vulnerable and dictates policies at a much deeper level. So this is not just about being inconvenienced in a street that we use, or memories we've had in the past, or where we've grown up, or whether we're anchor or native residents. This is about our heart and soul and what we've come to learn and know, and because of that, what we have to contribute. And I'm sorry if I sound on a pulpit, please forgive me. I feel very passionate about this. I agree with Millie. I had the opportunity to work with Millie years ago. I agree with a lot of all what you have to say, and I appreciate all your efforts. But at some point, we're going to have to come together with a great deal of passion and say, no, you can't do this. And that doesn't mean, and I want to emphasize this, it does not mean in any part of the equation that we are anti-development. We are pro-inclusion.
Thanks, Janice.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you all. And thank you all for joining.
Bruce, sorry that you've been waiting for so long with your hand up.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wow, what a hard act to follow. So thank you, Janice, so much, because now I'm going to ask more technical questions, so a little boring. My question is, so it's very clear that the developers, Walnut Capital, are pushing this probably with it sounds like the help of Mayor Peduto before Peduto exits the mayor office in January. So I'm wondering if one, is that correct? Do you feel like this is why they're pushing it so quickly before Peduto transfers over to what should be, we hope, Gainey in January? Is that kind of when I'm reading correctly? And the second question is there a way then to reach out to the Gainey campaign and ask them if he would be willing to, with his assumption, I'm assuming, of the after the election next week or in 2 weeks, that he can ask for the current process to slow down until he actually can come into office, so that we actually have time to look at this and to discuss it publicly and to present it to the public and actually have discussion and discourse around it. Has any action or thoughts been proposed about reaching out to Gainey Gainey and see if he can be an ally in this for responsible development in Oakland.
So until the election, Gainey has been rather cagey about where it is that he stands on a lot of different issues, with, pretty understandably. So it's not 100% clear where his administration will come down on this issue. But in the meantime, like procedurally, this bill is squarely in council's lap, and council is not changing its membership until next year. So it's not the case that there will be a complete, overhaul of the members who are going to be looking at this or dealing with this. That said, the new mayor does get the opportunity to name new members to the Planning Commission, and there may be some hiccup there. But Planning Commission is planning to be finished with its review of the proposed bill by the second week of January. So there is no way for them at this stage to get it done before December. The timing of the bill's introduction, had we not submitted a request for a hearing, and had we not then been awarded a hearing and pushed the process forward a couple of weeks, they would have been able to turn this around within the allotted time, and the 90 days would have expired before the end of the year. City Council could have had it and taken an action on it at that time. So we kind of counted a bit of as a victory. The Planning Commission is now going to consider this in the second week of January, and there might yet be a delay between the Planning Commission's decision and its return to City Council, since the Planning Commission is not obliged to return their decision to Council, but I believe a couple of months even after their decision has been reached. And in this particular case, right, the public and iterative process of the Oakland plan is ongoing. A city-funded, city-led, city-driven, community public process for producing a comprehensive neighborhood plan for Oakland is underway, is currently in process. And the expectation is that there will be a first draft of this plan sometime in February, and that with revisions that will come from the next iterative set of inputs to that first draft, that they might have a final draft ready by early summer for City Council to review, following Planning Commission review as well. So, in terms of getting this out there for the public, as was in that little excerpt that we played of Bruce Krause saying, like, there isn't much opportunity for the public's input to have any kind of impact on the bill's structure or content at this time. The amendments have been made, the plan that has been sent to the Planning Commission, and at this stage, if City Council decided that they wanted to make really substantive amendments to it, and they would be the only body that could make that decision, then they would have to start this whole process over again from scratch, and at which point this bill and the Oakland plan would be landing on City Council's desk at the same time. So I think that there are arguments to be made about, highlighting for people, that there is a public process, a genuine public process, which is ongoing, an iterative process in which, drafts are produced, comments are solicited, and then those comments are incorporated as changes and relayed back to the public for additional comment, that process is still going on, and that is the better method for sort of, layering everybody's competing, sometimes slightly at odds, interests in the Oakland plan. I don't mean to talk too long about this, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear about the different opportunities there. Did that make sense? Hearing nothing. Okay, Adam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Butkus. First of all, I want to thank Janice really for her comments. Like Bruce, I feel like I can't follow that kind of act, but great job from Janice. And I agree with her. I think this is an egregious attack. I will say that I've been serving on the Oakland Planning Committee, Working Committee, which is comprised of people who work in Oakland and also live in Oakland. And we've been working on this for 2 years. And candidly, I have to say that it seems like mostly everything that we've been talking about has been ignored. Okay, totally ignored. And I would remind people who say the solution to this is to call your city councilman that the vote was 8-0 to support Mr. Krause's resolution. So we're not going to get anywhere with city council. I'm sorry, we're just not. So I had some alternatives. First of all, I think if we want to get widespread opposition to this, we have to get more than what, there's 40 people on this call. Let's say we have a maximum audience of 100 people, okay? We need to get widespread, support on this, because this is very akin to Amazon coming in and saying, I'm going to build a warehouse right across the street from your house. And they didn't, call to ask you first, okay? And I don't think that any of us really support that. To Michael's point, I'm not anti-development at all, but I want to get involved in it. Elizabeth and I, for example, have worked on things like packing apartments. Elizabeth has really worked a lot on that. Nothing seems to be, going with packing apartments. I mean, it's like, kind of an irrelevant topic. No one seems to care about it. People should care about it. If you live in Oakland, you care about it. One of the greatest things that we have is that when the Planning Commission, the working committee first started, and I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology here, but the working committee, which is basically, people that live in the area, includes people who live in the area. I would bet that we had about 10 people who were residents. Now we have about 4 or 5. And simply because everything we're saying has been ignored. So I had a nice conversation today with Andy Sheehan from KDKA. And then we had some topics about this, like how do we get to the greatest coverage area and the greatest level of support. And I'm going to run some things past Elena Zaitsev and some other people here, Mark, and basically just kind of see if those are alternatives. But I think what we have to do is, the same meetings that we had the Planning Commission, and this is the last point I'm going to make, and then I'll shut up. The basic point is that the Planning Committee meetings that we had, the working committee, were Zoom meetings that Todd Reedborough attended, okay? He didn't say a blessed thing, but was an observer. And apparently, based on observing a whole bunch of different meetings, he didn't really feel there was a whole lot to stand in his way of unlimited profit in Oakland. So I think that we have to, I think that what we have to do is basically, stop playing hardball and trying to, rely on logic, because logic isn't going to do it. Thank you.
I think that further to the point that people were making, that it's time for us all to sort of pull in the same direction. I think that among the things that Walnut Capital has observed in participating in those action team meetings is that there's tremendous division among the neighbors, and that there is a great deal of suspicion and division that they are actively trying to exploit. So I can hear you that there is, it's never fun to be part of a process where the inevitable outcome is going to be a series of compromises. But I have to say, I kind of disagree that nobody takes over-occupancy in Oakland seriously. And also that this isn't something that hasn't been front and center in almost all of the conversations that we've been having with city planning about strategies for being able to relieve the rental pressure on the single family homes. It's not something that can be achieved with the kind of density that is being proposed by Walnut Capital in this particular design concept, because we can all agree that this is pure displacement of existing residents, and this will exacerbate the rental pressure by students for down market housing in Central and South Oakland, and it will push that rental pressure outside of Oakland as well. So the more housing that we build for professionals without any kind of accommodation, either for affordable housing or for affordable, attractive, and proximate student rental that of sufficient density, all of that will amount to displacement, further displacement of home ownership and long-term Oakland residents. There's simply there's no math that gets you to a win without addressing those kinds of needs all at the same time. So some kind of transformation in Oakland is going to happen, but unless we have really concerted and thoughtful and engaged participation by the public in determining how to manage that transformation, where it would be best located, how it should relate to the other parts of Oakland, we're going to be taken advantage of by people who have plans that are already underway, and that kind of stuff will, I'd say that kind of stuff trumps public process more or less every time where there is that kind of division. So again, I really want to reiterate to everybody that the public process that is happening right now is the Oakland plan, and I'm, no one who has participated in that has had an unvarnished positive experience. I've been frustrated by it too. But it is definitely the best possible vehicle that we have available to us at this time to be able to, really engage these kinds of issues in a layered way. And the more documented opinions and questions and priorities that we have articulated on the Engage site, which is currently the best available vehicle, the better case we can make for the Department of City Planning to write resident concerns into the final product of the Oakland plan. That's my opinion too, so go ahead and preface that. Nobody else has their hand raised, but does anybody else want to say something or question, push back on anything I've said? Additional thoughts?
I think at least, and actually I talked to, I think it was Michael a while ago, what we do here in Pittsburgh may have some, trivial effect on what happens at Cranberry, but Cranberry in particular, and maybe just a bad example, but Cranberry, it's its own epicenter and growing by leaps and bounds, and it may hold it off for a little while, but this project is not going to stop anything from happening at Cranberry.
Mark, my point is more on density, right? It's more a philosophical point on density, right? To me, I would rather increase density in an urban environment than allowing urban sprawl. Pittsburgh is famous for its urban sprawl. We have one of the highest urban sprawls going on without population growth, actually. So, that's more the environmental angle that I take on in how I look at development, right? So the greater the density, the less likely it is to have urban sprawl.
I appreciate that. I just think that some of the pressures that put people out in the suburbs and growing in Cranberry in particular is that nothing here is going to stop that. I don't even think, not even slow it down.
Well, there is an argument to be made that there needs to be a road for in-migration into the city. There needs to be some place where, professionals can in fact actually live close to work. I think the question to be managed here, because that is something that is a desire, right? There are many people who would like to be able to live in Oakland. To be able to manage that properly, I think the problem is, how do you accomplish that without exacerbating the problems that the existing residents are currently suffering here in Oakland, which is to say, that pressure of down market rental and over occupancy, the pressure of single family housing being used for purposes for which it was not intended, and the consequent unaffordability of those homes to would-be homeowners, and the opportunity that we're taking away from people who would like to be able to live here, who are not the professionals, who would like to be able to not have to sit on 2 buses from the lower Monday Valley in order to be able to get to work. How can we encourage the kind of development, how can we support the kind of development that would allow all of those different kinds of people to live together in Oakland, that will require increasing density, but it's, you know, a question to be put to the larger community, exactly what kind of density and where, and for what sort of market. And those are the kinds of slightly more refined questions, if you will, that it's so important to get input on in the Oakland plan process.
And to that same point, I don't know if we have the housing stock that's attractive for 20, 30 somethings to move into, right? I mean, a lot of the houses that are here, and I live in them, they are 100 to 130 years old, requiring a substantial amount of reinvestment to get them up to code. And so I don't know how many young professionals are interested in taking that on as their sort of first home project. I just don't think we have the housing stock that appeals to that age group. And so if we do want to have a mixed age group of people living here, I think we need to think of that sort of development that offers that here. And we just don't have it. We have great, you know, we have a lot of students here. We have a few of us long-term residents who are still hanging on, but there's nothing really attractive to the 20, 30-year-olds to come into the community, right? It's just the buildings aren't there.
Well, I mean, some of the buildings are there, but then they are priced unaffordably. So like the quantity of work, as you're saying, that would be involved in bringing them into a condition where they would be attractive to somebody as a single family home again, you know, after decades of having been used as rental, for instance, that kind of deferred maintenance in those buildings, it's pretty substantial. But then in addition, any home buyer in Oakland is competing against an investor who has an opportunity to turn that house into, you know, essentially an ATM by stuffing it full of undergrads and looking the other way as the overoccupancy, you know, basically allows them to command whatever price they want. So, you know, it's a very layered issue. But, you know, I'm a resident of Oakland Square, and I have a number of neighbors younger than myself. I turned 50 on Friday. I have a number of neighbors who are younger than myself, who, you know, have also made substantial investments into the houses that they've purchased, and, you know, have a great deal of house pride and pride of place in the neighborhood and the community. You know, I don't think that it has to describe the majority of people in that age bracket, but it certainly describes some. But more to the point also, then, there's housing here which is maybe humbler than what it is that you had in mind for selling to the professional classes, that, you know, was built as working class housing that could be placed into people's hands again to be a source, or rather you know, an investment that can translate itself into intergenerational wealth. And in a neighborhood that was redlined in the past, the way Oakland was, for instance, we have an obligation as a community to really look for opportunities to be able to correct past injustice in that respect. And to return those kinds of opportunities to a new generation of Oakland residents who would enjoy living here as much as you and I do. So it's definitely you know, a very complex conversation, and I hear from everybody, you know, the desire the concern about preserving the sense of neighborhood that they have within the residential communities, the need to increase this kind of density. You know, in the interests of the region, certainly, but then also in the interests of being able to preserve that kind of affordability in the housing stock, to be able to locate more of the student rental that drives that kind of affordability in Oakland, in a location that is much denser. You know, there's without all of those different things at the same time, any given one is displacing other people and is exacerbating some of these kinds of issues. So it really has to be coordinated. It really has to be sort of a concert of effort, in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff on the chat. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to keep everybody. I know that this is late, and I really do apologize for keeping everybody so late. I had a communication back channeling from Elena about Oakwatch. This has been a really valuable conversation, and we've wanted to keep this going. So I did not cut this short in order to be able to go to Oakwatch, but I would like at this time, unless anybody has any parting thoughts or questions, that you should, well, you all know how to find me, I hope. But I'm going to turn this over to Elena if she would be so kind to talk briefly a couple of Oakwatch updates.
Hi, I'm going to stay off camera because my internet is telling me it's unstable. And yes, we're cutting this short. We had Gwen Bolden, the director of on-street and metered parking for the Parking Authority, confirmed to speak, but as it turned out, okay, that she canceled at the last minute, and she was going to speak on the residential permit parking program. There is information on the ordinance on the Engage site, so I would ask you to go there. We'll be following up more with her and have more information on that next month. I will tell you, it has gone to City Council, and just the 4 big changes, the roles played by the city and the Parking Authority are changing. Non-resident visitors permits for landlords, contractors, medical providers, and childcare providers are in the ordinance. Hybrid areas can be made with both permit parking and meters, and changes in a district can be initiated by more groups than just residents. So that's what is going on with that. And again, you can call your city council people. Look it up first and then call your city council people. The other thing we have to touch on is the fact that Halloween is coming up, and we would like just to tell the police we are concerned, and we'd like to hear about extra plans. Anybody, Zone 4?
I see
Is Commander Griffin with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, Officer Schifrin, hi.
How are you? Yeah, if you're asking about Halloween plans, I can find out. I don't know about them myself right now without any kind of preparation, but I can find out.
Okay, we'll take the message that we would appreciate extra patrols. It's on Halloween's on a Sunday.
Okay.
So, you know, we're expecting like party city.
Yeah, the party.
Liz, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the parties will start Thursday. They'll run Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah.
So
Yes, they will.
that's just how they roll.
And is Officer Colello here from Pitt? Did he hang out?
I am.
Thank you for staying with us.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me. I did. I just spoke with the lieutenant. It's a shift lieutenant. It's about extra patrols all through Oakland in the troubled areas during the upcoming weekends, especially over the Halloween weekend. So we'll be out in full force.
Okay, again, oh, Liz, you have one comment to make from John Tokarski?
You're muted.
Oh, yes, I do. John just asked that I remind everybody that tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the JCC is the Zone 4 Public Safety meeting. And also we're getting near Thanksgiving, which means we're coming up to the Stuffed with Love, Stuffed with Love project, which the police are helping people in need with getting the Thanksgiving dinners. So if you know anybody who needs help with their Thanksgiving dinner, please let John or myself know, and we'll coordinate on that.
Okay, any other pressing updates from any other partners? It's 10 to 8. Officer Schifrin?
Yeah, well,
oh, I'm losing. Is it me or is it him?
Yeah, I think it's him. Officer Schifrin, if you would not mind killing your video while you're trying to speak, it'll be easier.
I think he's frozen.
I think he is too.
Okay.
Well, I hope he rejoins us. If you can hear us, Officer Schifrin, if you can kill your video, it might go easier on your bandwidth. Okay.
To any of our other partners, if you would send in any reports you have for the OPDC website. And again, thank you for all the conversation tonight.
Truly.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
reiterate gratitude. Thank you very much. If anyone would like to chat further, I'll stay on for a little bit, but I hope that you all have a good night and we'll stop the recording now. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.